The big question now is what this could mean for the war in Gaza and the wider region, with the world bracing for a response from the Houthis and those who support them.
Well, let's look at some of those questions with Elisabeth Kendall, who's a Middle East expert from Cambridge University. Welcome to DW. Let's start local and zoom out if we can. We'll start with the Red Sea. What does this escalation mean for this area, one of the busiest shipping channels in the world?
Well, of course, the idea behind the strikes by the United States and the UK is to try to disengage the Houthis from wreaking havoc in the Red Sea. So the whole point is to try to tamp down the conflict there. The problem now is that the actual effect it may have on the region is to make things even worse. And the reason I say that is that the Houthis are no strangers to airstrikes. They have been in a civil war in Yemen now for 9 years. They've suffered more than 25,000 airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition. And it didn't deter them. So I think looking ahead, we might stand to see even more conflict start to erupt in this Red Sea region.
OK. The Houthis say they're launching these attacks for the sake of Hamas in its war against Israel. Should we take that claim at face value?
I think that claim could be taken in two ways. I don't think we can dismiss it entirely as not being genuine. I think the Houthis, as are many people around the Arab world, are genuinely concerned about the plight of the Palestinians and feel that they want to stick up for them in a way that other governments, other regimes in the region probably can't speak out. And however, it's absolutely the case that this works very well for them politically and that they are able to exploit the situation in an opportunistic way to try to gain more support for themselves inside Yemen and indeed more broadly. So it works at both those levels at the same time.
Right. Let's go back then to this notion that you say it looks like this Operation Prosperity Guardian hasn't worked, may indeed backfire, because I wonder about the calculation for commanders in charge of this operation. How hard they must be looking at, well, how hard can we hit them without the whole region going up in flames?
That's going to be extremely difficult to understand. Now, it didn't look like there were many options left on the table. Most things had been tried. Sanctions against the Houthis, curbing their flow of funds, some diplomatic efforts, but without much leverage over the Houthis, those weren't really going to work. And then, of course, the threat of having the multinational maritime force in the region. None of that was enough to deter them. And so we've now moved to this much more direct military action. Finding that line, however, is going to be really difficult because being at war in the Red Sea is one thing. Sea is one thing. Land, taking this fight now to Yemen, to a land-based airstrike situation, that really could inflame the region. And the Houthis, for sure, will be milking this for all that they have. It plays into their narratives of being the victim of the US and its allies being aggressive towards Arab and Muslim states. That's exactly how they wanted to pitch it.
Just a quick final thought on whether the Houthis could just wait this out, because the US has shown itself now to be disinclined to become too deeply involved in foreign adventures. The Houthis could just absorb this. America gets bored or distracted. It's got an election on the way. And then the Houthis are still there, and maybe even a change of policy at the White House.
This is precisely the dilemma here, because it is an unequal war. On the one hand, we have the US and allies who do not want to get bogged down in a war and who are very sensitive to casualties. And on the other, we have the Houthis who are quite willing to take significant casualties, who seem quite comfortable with the discomfort of their populations, who have been at war now on and off in the region for almost 20 years, since 2004, in fact. And so they're hardened, they're used to this. And really, if you're around the age of 20, 22, inside Yemen, all you've known, apart from 1 or 2 years, is going war. To be war.
Right.
So they have much more appetite to continue this than we do. And they can do a lot with very little resource.
That's very clear. Thank you so much for talking us through that, Elisabeth Kendall from Cambridge University.
You're welcome.